Hey guys, this is James from TDB, going to be talking today about the Xiaguan tea factory, one of the two kind of big tea factories that you're going to run into. And when we're talking about the kind of like important kind of big brands that are worth trying, you're going to run into two way more often than others. The first of which is the Menghai Tea Factory. I'll be talking about them on another video. And the other one, of course, is the Xiaguan Tea Factory, which I'm going to be talking about today. These are both kind of long-running factories. They've been operating, I don't know, quite 100 years, but close to that. My notes say that Xiaguan was formed in 1941. I'm not a historian. I'm not particularly interested in those details, but they've been at it for a really long time. They're based in Dali, which I think is important because that's in the area a little bit north of where you're going to see kind of like the three main tea pu'er growing prefectures, which are Linsang in the north, Samao or Pu'er County in the middle, and Menghai County in the bottom. So they are kind of known to be producing a lot of pu'er and things like that, not necessarily from the south, Menghai County. I think most people would probably guess that they certainly a fair bit of northern tea makes its way into their productions. They're also a factory that's far more known for their raw tea than the ripe tea. Well, they do make ripe pu'er and things like that, some of which are kind of favorites. Things like this Xiaofa tool is perhaps one of their most famous ripes. They're definitely more known for their raw. I actually coincidentally happen to have a lot of Xiaguan tea sitting behind me, so perhaps I will reference those as we go kind of through this video. Let's see, what else is there? Like Menghai Tea Factory, they have been at it for a while. This is not one of those factories that was formed in the 90s or the early 2000s. So they have products that date way back. They're well known for their tool chas, which are these, which are kind of like these like kind of bird's nest sort of shaped things, often coming on 100 grams, sometimes 250 grams, sometimes you get some real chonkers. They are also well known for their iron cakes, which you'll often see signified on like recipes with like a T at the front. So for instance, one of their famous recipes is the 8653. They'll make an iron cake version and a non-iron cake version. In front of the iron cake version, you're going to see the T in front of that. Their older products are known to have aged well, and they will certainly get a high price. They're in particular popular in Southeast Asia. Part of this could be because like these products and things like that age particularly well and synergize well with the hotter and humid climate of Southeast Asia, while Hong Kong, Taiwan, those places are known for a fair amount of hot heat and humidity. Southeast Asia is even more so. Hong Kong traditional storage sort of excluded. These are places that have relatively hot, like we're talking Malaysia, Singapore here, high temperatures and high humidity pretty much year round. So in that sense, if you are in the West like myself, aging these teas is going to be very different than Southeast Asia. Also wanted to talk about what are some of the kind of most famous teas and the teas that you should get kind of a benchmark in trying. And so for that, I would recommend the 8653 recipe, the Jiaji tool, and the Tuji tool. So the Jiaji tool comes in a box like this. The 8653 isn't a cake. I'd personally recommend like something like an iron caked 8653. But if you can only get your hands on sort of like the normal pressed 8653, usually Xiaguan is going to press those pretty tight anyways. That could be okay too. And the Tuji tool is another type of tool. That one normally comes in a sleeve, so you're going to get like a sleeve of 5. You can, of course, buy one tool if you can track that down. So Xiaguan, as you can tell, known for their tools, known for their iron cakes, and less so the ripe. So a couple secondary teas to try after you try those first ones. I would recommend the Xiaofa tool as far as the ripe goes. They're also really well known for their Tibetan flame, which is usually a little bit of lower quality leaf. It is for export to Tibet. Historically, I believe they would have that as sort of like a yak butter tea. So this is a tea that sometimes you can find it for a pretty good price and significant age. So that's another well-known one that's worth trying. Another kind of sub-brand that's well associated with Xiaguan is FT, Feitai. So you're going to run into certain productions that have the FT there. So that's basically like this company that will work with Xiaguan and basically make kind of these other productions. They will also make things like the 8653 and different kind of well-known products. So but as a result, kind of the FT 8653 can be a little bit different than kind of the straight Xiaguan 8653. They're known, they kind of have close associations with the Taiwanese market, so they're known for like a slightly softer taste. I would still say the majority of FT products I've had taste very much like Xiaguan, but they are kind of can be a little bit different too. Sometimes throughout the years, they will also make this sort of 5 cake series like blue mark, red mark, quality stamp, a different blue mark, things like that. I've reviewed a bunch of those from the 2003-2004 era that I got from Tim and Mike, so thank you to those guys. Another one that's well known is the Kongar. But I would really say start with those top 3, the 8653, the Jiaji, and the Tuji. I think trying those teas will give you kind of a good idea of what Xiaguan is about and what their factory is. So where to try? I think this is something that will change throughout time. I would certainly recommend Teas We Like, which is currently selling a Iron Cake 8653 sampler, which is not cheap, but has a bunch of different teas that have pretty good storage and is just a good way to kind of get a good feel for that recipe. What do you want to look for? So for me, at least, Xiaguan teas are absolutely not intended to be consumed young. While you can try them young, I would strongly recommend buying tea that is aged at least 10 years and ideally at least 15. Another thing to pay very close attention to is the storage on these teas. It's going to matter a whole lot. A Xiaguan tea stored kind of in the West here or somewhere like Kunming is going to be aging a lot more slowly than something stored in southern China or Taiwan. So I'd recommend looking for those two places, southern China and Taiwan. If you can also get your hands on some Xiaguan stored in Southeast Asia, that would be great as well. A place like Malaysia or Singapore, those would be pretty ideal places to store Xiaguan. So Xiaguan has more of those associations with both northern tea, but really kind of a big blend of different areas, and then Southeast Asia, whereas Monghai Tea Factory is more closely associated with Hong Kong and kind of the Monghai County area too. So definitely pay close attention to the storage. So if I were looking to just kind of get a good sampling of those, I would look for kind of those 3 main recipes that I referenced, and looking for something that's stored in southern China or Taiwan. Prices are going to go up as you look further back. It's not quite as dramatic as Dai. So something that's very famous, like the 1999 Iron Cake 8653, which is kind of the famous Xiaguan from that year. I think it's still only about, it might even be under 1,000, I'm not totally sure. Whereas like Dai teas will regularly get up to 5 figures there. So yeah, similar to Dai, there will be fakes around, so don't try to just buy the cheapest thing. Another thing that you're going to run into too is that the productions will change throughout the year. So if you buy the cheapest 8653 from a certain year, that might not be nearly the same quality as an 8653 pressed earlier that year. So it can get very confusing. So in that sense, I do recommend trying reliable vendors and sampling and just kind of following best practices there. I mentioned Teas We Like already as a good place to kind of try the 8653. I think they also have some tools. They tend to source a lot of Taiwanese stored tea, which is a good place to store something like Xiaguan, certainly better than most of the West. You can also check out places like Yunnan Sourcing, King Tea Mall. Definitely pay attention to the storage for both of those places. King Tea Mall has not been storing those teas themselves. I think they do tend to have a lot of southern China stored tea. Yunnan Sourcing is based in Kunming, so they have more tea from there, which could be an interesting contrast to try. But Scott knows what he's doing and does tend to source a lot of those teas stored from other places in China that are going to have a little bit more humidity and provide a little bit more age, like biological maturation to those teas. All right, so I think that just about wraps up this episode. Hopefully that covers most of it. Just really trying to get into the nitty gritty of kind of Xiaguan and what you would need to know if you are new to tea and looking to check them out. It's definitely one of those places that is absolutely worth checking out for big factory tea. Them as well as Monghai Tea Factory, I would say, are the other one. Is the other one. So I'll make another video for them at some point. Thank you all for tuning in. I will see y'all next time. Cheers.